Yeah. Does it still fit, I hope? Does it still fit?
Welcome to CBB. Shana Tova. Happy New Year. Come on in.
We have prepared for you a meaningful religious experience.
Follow me. Come on in.
Sit back and relax.
Enjoy from your sofa.
Plug in and turn on your volume.
Welcome to Yom Kippur morning services.
Good morning, everyone. Good Yontif, Shana Tova, and welcome back. We're very delighted to be with you virtually this morning, as we have been throughout the High Holy Days. And I want to begin with just an introductory thought, which is that I mentioned last night, I talked a little bit about a journey. And today is a different kind of journey. Today is a full day of prayer, of reflection, music, study. I know that some of you will not necessarily be focused on Yom Kippur all day long, but I do want to encourage you to consider the possibility of setting aside this entire day from now until the final shofar blast tonight at around 7 o'clock. And in the spirit of a journey and sort of a long-distance hike, I want to share with you one of the little mottos of people who hike in the Sierras is HYOH, which stands for Hike Your Own Hike. And I think that applies to Yom Kippur also. For every single person, the way to make this day meaningful is going to be different than it is for anybody else. For some people, it might be to sit for much of the day with the book, with the prayer book, with our live stream services. But for others, it might be to spend time outside, to go for a walk, to take a nap. That's often an important part of the Yom Kippur experience for me. But there is no right or wrong way to do this day. The fact that you're all at home today, I think both creates some special challenges and also some special opportunities. Ordinarily, many of us would be in synagogue all day long. And the fact that you're at home, especially if you're trying to fast today, I think will pose extra challenges. I know that it would for me. To try to be at home fasting all day long and resist the temptation of a little nibble, especially late in the morning or in the middle of the afternoon, I think is going to be harder than if you were in synagogue where everybody else was at least, to all appearances, fasting. So, beyond just the challenges of fasting, I think when you're at home, there are more distractions, perhaps, than there are in synagogue. And so it will be important for you to find ways of shutting out the distractions. In some cases, it's just as simple as a physical act, like taking a talit and draping it all the way over yourself. That's one of the physical ways of shutting out distractions in a traditional Jewish setting. Each one of you will find your own way of making your way through this day and making this day as meaningful as possible for you. As I suggested on Rosh Hashanah, I think that it would be a wonderful thing for there to be a lot of texting going on, a lot of emails flying around our community today. Ordinarily we would be together physically. We can't be physically together today, so let's use this new technology to stay as connected as possible throughout the whole day. All right, we're ready to begin our services. I want to make two announcements. One is a serious and sort of concerning announcement, and the other is a happy announcement. The serious, concerning announcement is that we've been told that there are some new, very frightening fires burning in the northern part of the state, in Napa and Sonoma and Santa Rosa. And we are thinking of the people up there. I know the cantor mentioned that his sister and her family were evacuated from their home. So in our prayers today are included all of the people who are needing to deal with fire. Both Jewish people who are trying to, in some way, make this Yom Kippur, but everybody up there who is facing the fears and dangers of fire. The happy announcement is that today is Cantor Mark's birthday. He was born on Yom Kippur many years ago, and it comes around every once in a while that his birthday falls out on Yom Kippur, and this is one of those years. So I want to start our day off by wishing our cantor a very, very happy birthday.
Well, thank you. And yes, put away that birthday cake, Rabbi. Stop enticing me with that.
I thought that was the perfect excuse for having a little nosh in the middle of the day. But
thank you.
Anyway, we'll be celebrating with you spiritually.
Good. I appreciate that.
I'd like to invite you now in your books to turn to, well, actually, we're going to take some quiet time. Is that right? Take a little bit of quiet time. If you have the book with you at home or the flip book, I invite you to open the book anywhere between pages 138 And 158, sometimes I like to just close my eyes and open the book and see what page opens, and then see what was meant for me on that page. And in just a minute or two, we'll come back together and we'll be on page 158.
Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi Torahi. Ata verata, Ata Yetzarta. Ata nefachta bi ve'ata meshamra bekirbi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Ve'atid litla mimeni Ulahachazira bi le'atid lavo. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Pure is the soul that you have given me, and when it returns to you, I will find a place in eternity. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. 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 Baruch atah Adonai אשר בידו נפש כל חי ורוח כל בשר
We continue on the bottom of page 172. Ha'el b'ta'tzumot ezecha, ha'gadol b'chvod shemecha, ha'gibor lanetzach, v'hanora b'norotecha. Holy One, infinite your power, radiant your glory, unbounded your might, awe-inspiring your works.
Kiseram venisa shochen ad marom vekadosh shemo vechato ranenu tzadikim Badonai la yesharim navatehila befi yesharim etitramam uvediveret tzadikim etitbarach uvilshon chasidim תתקדש ובקרב קרושים תתהלל.
Page 175. Our sovereign God, source of holiness and greatness, may your name be praised forever in this world and beyond. Eternal One, God of our mothers and our fathers, your strength, sanctity, glory, and dominion are deserving of song, praise, poetry, hymn, sacred chant, and blessings of thankfulness for all time and eternity. Baruch atah Adonai, El Melech Gadol Batishbachot, El Ha'odaot, Adon Haniflaot, Habocher B'shirei Zimra, Melech El Chei Ha'olamim. Blessed are you, Adonai, sovereign of praise, source of the impulse to give thanks, crown of wonders, who desires a world filled with song and a universe of life. We rise for the Baruch Hu, page 178.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'ed.
Please be seated.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hapotech lanu sharei rachamim umeir einei hamachkim lislichato, yotzer or v'rechoshech, osei shalom uvorei et hakol. Or olam beotzar chayim orot meofel, hama vayehi. המאיר לה בארץ ורערו ימרח ברחמים וטובו מחדש בכל יום תמיד מעשה וראשית. מה רבו מעשיך אדוני כולם בחוכמה עשיתם על הארץ כי ענייניך. תתברך אדוני אלוהינו השבח מעשה ידיך והמאורי אור שעשית יפרוך הסלע. אור חדש על ציון תאיר. ונזכה כולנו מהרה מהרה לאורו. ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות.
Amen. Page 183. All who are thirsty, come here for water. Drink deep of Torah, a fathomless well. Seas spread out to distant horizons. Torah encompasses all of the earth. Water revives and refreshes the body. Torah is potent, restoring the soul. Soil and pollution swept away in pure waters. Immersing in Torah, the spirit is cleansed. Earth's precious water, free and untrammeled. Torah is open and belongs to all people. Mighty waters pour down like thunder. Torah is shared in a rainbow of voices. Waters flow from the heights to the valleys. Torah will dwell in the humble of heart. Raindrops swell into powerful rivers. Begin in your learning, and wisdom will grow. Fountain of gardens, wellspring of fresh water. Words of Torah bring life to the world. Our praise to you, Adonai. With love, you offer Israel the gift of Torah. We're on page 184. Unite us in love and reverence for you, that we may never feel ashamed of our deeds. We have trusted in your great and holy name. Now let us celebrate at last the joy of your salvation.
והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ, ותוליכנו כממיהו לארצנו. יהיה פה ישועות, אתה ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון. וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע באמת, להודות לך על יחרך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני,
Shema.
הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. Page 188. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם המזוזות ביתך ובישעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Page 194. From Egypt you redeemed us, Adonai our God, and from the slave house you set us free. For this the people who felt your love exalted you, and the ones you found precious sang hymns of praise. blessing and thanks to the living God who reigns forever, high and exalted, inspiring wonder, who humbles the proud and raises the lowly, who frees the captive, redeems the oppressed, and sustains the poor. God responds to the cry of our people, their prayer in time of need. Sing praise to God Most High, most blessed source of blessing, as Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang this joyous song to you. 196.
Mi chamocha ba'em Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, nora tehilo oseh ve'eleh, shira chadasha שיבחו גאולים לשמך אספת הים יחר כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ובדחנו ממך יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
We turn now to page 198, and we rise. If you're not standing yet, this would be the time to stand up. We have come to the section of the service called the Amidah, which means the standing. It's also sometimes just called hatfilah, the prayer. This is the moment where our tradition, our prayer book, invites us to use our imagination and to picture ourselves stepping into the presence of God and entering into a conversation with the divine. Now, our tradition also recognizes that for every single individual, the personal experience of prayer will be utterly different than it is for anybody else. And the reading on the top of page 198 is a beautiful sort of meditation on the different experiences that individuals have had of prayer over the centuries. And the invitation to you really is to use your imagination in whatever way works for you to picture yourself coming into the presence of the divine. In the depths of night, by the edge of the river, Jacob was left alone. In heartfelt longing in the temple of God, Hannah uttered her prayer alone. In the barren wilderness, in doubt and despair, Elijah found God alone. On the holiest day, in the Holy of Holies, the high priest entered alone. We are bound to one another in myriad ways, but each soul needs time to itself. In solitude, we meet the solitary one. Silence makes space for the still small voice. For the psalmist says, deep calls unto deep. From the depths of our soul, we seek what is most profound.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Eternal God, open my lips that my mouth may declare your glory. אתה אדוני, אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, ואימותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק, ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי לאה, ואלוהי רחל, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. זוכרנו, זוכרנו לחיים, זוכרנו, זוכרנו לחיים, זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים, למענך אלוהים חיים, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיי מתים, אתה רב להושיע מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ברופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. מי כמוך על הרחמים, מי כמוך אל הרחמים, זוכר יצורם לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים.
This is a moment where you might want to sit down unless you feel like standing for a while. Everything in the service up until now has been more or less kind of a normal Jewish prayer service. There have been little insertions and little special high holy day melodies, but what we're about to enter into now is a lengthy section of the service that is specifically for the high holy days. We heard it on Rosh Hashanah. We're going to hear it now on Yom Kippur. This is the Unatana Tokef, the passage of the prayers that takes us to the throne room of God and in this setting, the words of the prayers remind us of our fragility, the fragility of our lives, and our vulnerability, the things that can go wrong, and the tragedies that can come into our lives. And this entire passage ends with a very simple and profound statement, which is that there are three things that can help us deal with our fragility, that can help us cope with our vulnerability. And those three things are teshuvah, tefillah, tzedakah. Teshuvah meaning repentance or return. It's a process of inwardness and reflection and of choosing to change our lives. The second is tefillah, which is the act of prayer, of opening ourselves to some higher enlightenment, encouragement. And the third is tzedakah, the act of assisting other people who are in need, and in many cases in more need than we are. Those are the three things that help us to cope with the vulnerability of our lives and our world. As just before we get to that line of the prayer book, the cantor will take us on a journey from the old ancient liturgy, the words of the ancient prayers, into a modern response to those traditional words by the modern great Jewish poet and musician, songwriter Leonard Cohen, who grew up in a very traditional Jewish world in Montreal, and he took the words "Who by fire" and turned them into a very powerful modern prayer. And the cantor will take us on this journey from the traditional Unatana Tokef into Leonard Cohen's "Who by fire."
Unatana Tokef Kedushat Hayom.
Unatana Tokef Kedushat Hayom.
Ki hu nora ve'ayom uvo tinaseh לבכור על צבא מרום בדין, לבכור על צבא מרום בדין. וכל באי עולם יעברון תעביר לפניך כבני מרום. כבקרת רועה עדרו, מעביר צאנו תחת שבטו. בראש השנה ייכתבו, וביום צום כיפור יחתמו. בראש השנה ייכתבו, וביום צום כיפור יחתמו. כמה יעבורון וכמה ייבריון, מי יחיה ומי ימות, מי וקיצו ומי לא וקיצו. בראש השנה ייכתבו, וביום צום כיפור יחתמו. בראש השנה ייכתבו, וביום צום כיפור ייחתמו. And who by fire, who by water, who in the sunshine, who in the nighttime, who by high ordeal, who by common trial, who in the month of May, who by very slow decay, and who shall I say is calling? Who in her lonely slip, who by barbiturate, who in these realms of love, who by something blunt, who by avalanche, who by powder, who for his greed, who for her hunger, and who shall I say is calling? Who by brave ascent, who by accident, who in solitude, who in his mirror, who by his lady's command, who by his own hand, who in mortal chains, who in power, and who shall I say is calling? Uteshuva, utefila, utsedaka, mavirin et roa hagezera.
Page 214. But through return to the right path, through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of the decree. You are everything that we praise you for. Slow to anger, quick to forgive. You do not wish the death of sinners, but urge them to return from their ways and live. Until the day of death, you wait for them. You accept them at once if they return. Since you created us, you know our impulses. We are but flesh and blood. We who are mortal, our origin is dust, and so is our end. We wear out our lives to get our bread. Like broken vessels, like withered grass, like a flower that must fade, a shadow moving on, a cloud passing by, mere dust on the wind, a dream that flies away. But for you, ever-living sovereign, time has no limits. Your presence, unbounded by days and years, is everywhere, a glorious mystery none can decipher. Your name is worthy of you, and you are worthy of your name, and our name you have linked with yours. We turn now to page 218 for the Kedushah, the sanctification of God's name, and we rise.
Nekadesh, Nekadesh, Nekadesh et Shimecha ba'olam, Nekadesh et Shimecha ba'olam, Keshem shemakdishim oto bishmei marom. ככתוב היה נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך הארץ כבודו Adir, adirenu, adir, adirenu, Adonai, Adonai, Adonenu, Madir, Madir, Shimecha bechol Baruch kevod Adonai mimekomo echad hu Eloheinu Hu Avinu Malkeinu Moshienu Vehu Yashmienu Vehu Yashmienu Berachamav Einei Kochai Ani Adonai Elohechem Imloch Adonai leolam Elohayich Tzion ledor hador Hallelujah.
And now we take time for silent prayer. Take it at your own pace. If you prefer, close the book. But if you're using the book, it goes all the way through page 250. Take your time. Find some time and some space for some silence.
Tzedakah, Yisrael ve'et kol amim b'kol let u'b'kol shah b'shlomech sim shalom, sim shalom, sim shalom, sim shalom.
Page 200.
They're not us.
Rabbi was lost. Plugged his earbuds.
Yeah. So we turn now to page 252 for the Avinu Malkeinu.
Sitting. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol aleinu, ve'alol aleinu, ve'tapeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu, Shema Kolenu, Shema Kolenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Almighty and merciful, hear our voice. Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you. Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and on our families. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror. Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of lives well lived. Avinu Malkeinu, renew for us a year of goodness. Avinu Malkeinu, let our hands overflow with your blessings. Avinu Malkeinu, let our eyes behold the dawn of redemption. Avinu Malkeinu, we pray, do not turn us away from you with nothing. Avinu Malkeinu, welcome our prayer with love, accept and embrace it. Avinu Malkeinu, act toward us as befits your name. Avinu Malkeinu, act for your sake, if not for ours. Avinu Malkeinu, you alone are our sovereign. Avinu Malkeinu, let the gates of heaven be open to our prayer. Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice. Treat us with tender compassion. Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love. We sing together at the bottom of page 253.
Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu v'hanenu, ki ein banu masim. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed, v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu.
We turn now in our books to page 254 for the beginning of the service of the reading of the Torah. Rabbi Brenner, are you going to be coming up to take out the Torahs?
Elohim Adonai ve'en kemasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim umemshaltecha bechodor v'hador Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai imloch leolam va'ed Adonai oz le'amo yiten Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom Av harachamim heitiv אל צונך את ציון, תבנה חומות ירושלים, כי בך לבר בטחנו, מלך אל רם ונישא, אדון עולמים. אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה. אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש ונורא שמו. אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש ונורא שמו. גדלו לאדוני איתי, ונרוממה שמו יחדיו. לך אדוני הגדול והגבורה והתפארת והנצח וההוד, כי כה בשמיים ובארץ, כי כה בשמיים ובארץ. לך אדוני הממלכה והעמיד נעשה לכל ראש.
Those of you that have been with us in the past, for High Holy Days past, know that this is the moment where ordinarily we would take the Torahs out. We would have different members of the congregation take the honor of carrying the Torah scrolls out throughout the whole congregation, and this would be the moment for our seventh inning stretch. So I invite you now, take your stretch. This is the moment. And in fact, if you need to, if you want to text a friend or send an email to your grandmother, this is a good time to do it. While we're all stretching and getting ready for the Torah reading, let me say just a word about the way that we do the Torah reading and also what is in the Torah reading for this morning. First of all, as you may know, we break the Torah reading into segments. on Yom Kippur, we break the reading into 6 segments, and we honor different members of our community by calling them up to recite the blessings before and after each segment. And on the High Holy Days, on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we call up groups of members of the congregation. On Rosh Hashanah, we called groups that were involved with different aspects of our communal life, study and prayer, acts of kindness, and so on. Today, we are going to be calling up different members of our congregation, groups that have been, in one way or another, essential to the existence of the congregation, the growth of the conversation, the health of the conversation, of the congregation. And of course, nobody is here with us physically in the room, and so we have asked individual members of the congregation to represent those different groups, and they've recorded their blessings. And so in each case, there will be a representative, or perhaps 2 representatives, representing a much larger group of people in each category. Our readings, as always on the High Holy Days, will be chanted by young people from our congregation, young people who learned how to chant Torah in preparation for their bar or bat mitzvah, and so they're back and have returned to us to chant for us again, but this time it's the special reading for Yom Kippur. In some cases, they have actually learned the special High Holy Day melody, which is completely different from the ordinary melody. And so in those cases, it's really a wonderful, wonderful accomplishment that they've learned the special High Holy Day melody for chanting from the Torah. The Torah reading this morning, you can follow it on page 266 of your Machzor, of your High Holy Day prayer book. This is the section of the Torah, the Torah portion, which is called Nitzavim, which means you are standing. You are standing. This is not the traditional Torah reading for Yom Kippur, which would be read this morning in an Orthodox or a conservative synagogue. This is a reading that was selected by the editors of the Reform prayer books, and it's from a very crucial moment in the history of the people of Israel. Comes at the end of the Torah. We're almost at the very end of the Torah, and this is the moment when Moses has gathered the entire people together to speak to them one last time before he dies. He's 120 years old. He knows, they know that he's about to die, and they're about to go on without him into the promised land. And so he has gathered the entire people, and in fact, the passage begins by describing everybody that is there. And there are a number of very, very important aspects of this reading that make it a very appropriate reading for Yom Kippur morning. First of all, this is the moment of re-covenanting. The first covenanting, that is the first moment in which the entire people enter into relationship with God, is at Sinai, at Mount Sinai, which took place just a few months after the Exodus from Egypt. And so in terms of this story, the covenant at Sinai took place almost 40 years earlier. The generation of people who came out of Egypt, the generation of people who stood at Sinai, have all died, almost all. Just a few people remain from that first generation. And so the people that are now standing together that Moses is speaking to are the children. This is the new generation. And so this new generation that did not stand at Sinai, they have come together to enter into a covenant just as their parents did. And so that's one level on which this is appropriate for Yom Kippur, because this is a moment when everybody, no matter how distant they have grown from the community, from the tradition, everybody comes together for a recovenanting with God and with our tradition. When Moses speaks to the people, he speaks to them about the future, about the fact that they're about to go into the promised land, but also tells them about a longer range future in which they will once again go into exile, and tells them that no matter how far into exile they go, even if it's as far as Santa Barbara, California, no matter how far, it will be possible for them to return to the land and to return to God. And so this is the great passage that's in which Moses speaks to the people about the promise of the possibility of return to the land, and also the return to Judaism and the return to God. And so in that level, it's appropriate for Yom Kippur. And the third and final way, and perhaps the most important, is that when Moses speaks to them at the end of his life, he sort of sums up the entire message of the Torah with a single verse in which he says, he's speaking for God, and he says, I set before you a choice, life or death, blessing or curse. You are free to choose. Therefore, choose life. And in those words, Moses sums up the entire message of his life, the entire message of the Torah, and that's the message that we're going to be hearing this morning. All right, so we are ready now. Again, you can follow the reading on page 266. Our first reader this morning is Isabel Kim Sherman, and for the honor of the first Aliyah, we call, as has been the custom in this congregation for many, many, many years, we call representatives of the Gersh Hochman family. The Gersh Hochman family were the founders, or among the founders of this congregation, all the way back in the late 1920s. And they have played a central founding and sustaining role for this congregation throughout all of the decades since then. And so our custom is to honor the Gersh Hochman family by calling them to chant the first blessing of the Torah reading on Yom Kippur, and representing the Gersh Hochman family, Daniel and Mandy Hochman. Daniel and Mandy.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamavarach. Baruch Adonai havarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bahar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem livnei Adonai Elohechem, Roshechem, Shiftechem, Ziknechem, Veshotrechem, Kol Yish Yisrael. Tapchem Neshechem, Vegerecha, Asher Vegerev Machanecha, Mechotev Eitzecha, Ad Shov Meimecha, Leovrecha Bivrit, Adonai Elohecha Uvalato, Asher Adonai Elohecha Koretimcha Hayom.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
And our traditional words of congratulation to someone who has done something well is Yashar Koach, which means literally straight strength. May your strength be directed in a straight direction. So Isabel, Yashar Koach on beautiful chanting, and Isabel did learn and use the traditional High Holy Day melody. Beautiful, beautiful job, Isabel. And Daniel and Mandy, on behalf of all of us, thank you. We want to thank your family, your grandparents, your parents, you, for your leadership for our congregation through all of the decades. And may you be blessed with a year of good health, of happiness, a sweet year for the year to come. Yashar Koach and Shana Tova. The second Aliyah, the second section, will be chanted by Fallon Lee, and representing, and our second group that we are calling for the honor of chanting the blessing before and after the reading are the past presidents of our congregation. And representing all of our past presidents is our immediate past president, Stephen Amerikaner.
Baruchu et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam vo'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bocha banu mikol ha'amim. V'naten lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Lema'an hakimatcha hayom lo le'am vehu yihye lecha l'Elohim ka'asher diber lach v'cha'asher nishpa le'avotecha le'Avraham le'Yitzchak u'Yaakov v'lo itchem levadchem Anuhi kored et habrit hazot ve'et ha'alah hazot ki et asher yishno bo imanu omed hayom lifnei Adonai Eloheinu ve'et asher einenu bo imanu hayom.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher naten lanu Torah temet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
So first of all, Fallon, Yashar Koach, on beautiful chanting. Was that the first time that Fallon had chanted with the High Holy Day Trump? Second. It's really profound and powerful to hear these young people chant, especially using the High Holy Day trope. But Fallon, Yashar Koach. And first of all, Mr. Amerikaner, I just want to say, I don't know if I've ever seen you go that long without smiling. For those of you that know Steve, he's always smiling, and so he's clearly taking his task very seriously. So Steve, thank you, and Yashar Koach on a beautiful chanting of that blessing. But I want to thank you and to all of the other past presidents of this congregation. On behalf of all of us, I would like to acknowledge the burden, the work, and I know that there is joy that goes with it and gladness that goes with it, but really we want to thank you for the burden of responsibility that you have shouldered. Without our presidents, this congregation would simply not exist. Being the president of the congregation, as you all I'm sure realize, it's an unpaid job, but it is a full-time job. Even when you're not in meetings, even when you're not specifically dealing with tasks, the weight of the congregation rests on your shoulders. And so for all of our presidents, our past presidents, our current president, Diane Zipperstein, we are so grateful to you for taking on that burden of responsibility for the entire congregation. And so as a reward for you and also for your families who share that burden, without the support of your families, we know that you, our presidents, could never, ever do this job. So for you and your families, we wish that this coming year be a year of peace, of happiness, a year of good health. Shana Tova. For the third Aliyah is going to be chanted by Escher Tollefson, who just celebrated his bar mitzvah recently. And for the third Aliyah, we call members of the Rabbi Circle. And I'll be saying a little bit more about them later on. And that is, what is the Rabbi Circle? But representing the Rabbi Circle, we call, for the honor of blessing the Torah, Meryl Zigar. Meryl.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten ha-Torah.
Amen. V'haya ki yavo'u alecha kol hadvarim ha'elech, habracha v'haklala, asher natati lefanecha, v'hashavta al levavecha, bechol hogayim, asher hadichacha, Adonai Elohecha Shama, Veshavta ad Adonai Elohecha, Veshamata vekolo, Kachol asher anu, asher chi metzavecha hayom, ata uvenecha, bechol levavecha ubechol nafshecha. Veshav Adonai Elohecha et shevotcha v'richamecha, veshav v'kivetzecha mikol ha'amim asher hafitzecha, Adonai Elohecha Shama.
Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chaye olam nata betochenu. Baruch ata Adonai noten ha-Torah.
Amen. Escher, Yashar Koach, straight strength to you, and especially for coming back so soon after your bar mitzvah and learning a completely new portion. Beautiful job, and great smile at the end of that chanting also. And Meryl, beautiful chanting, especially with that wonderful Hebrew accent. And to all of the members of the Rabbi Circle. First of all, let me explain. The Rabbi Circle is made up of people who have been blessed with the ability to give above, far beyond, really, above and beyond the ability of many of the others in our congregation to give financially. This congregation runs on many kinds of bases. This congregation is founded on a lot of work, blood, sweat, and tears, prayer, study, love, all of that. But it also depends on money. There is an old rabbinic saying, "Ein kemach, ein Torah," which means without flour, which stands for money, there can be no Torah. So, thank you. Not only have the members of the Rabbi Circle been blessed with the ability to give, but they have chosen to give. These are, for the most part, people who are philanthropists in our community. They have so many causes to choose from, and we are grateful. We're so grateful that you have chosen the congregation as a recipient of your generosity, your philanthropy, to enable this congregation to thrive, to be vibrant, and most importantly, to keep our doors wide open so that anybody, regardless of their ability to pay, is able to come and be a full member of our congregation without any questions asked. So, to all of the members of our Rabbi Circle, we thank you for your generosity, and we ask God's blessing upon you and upon your families, that this coming year be a year of good health, a year of growth, a year of learning and exploration, and most importantly, a year of peace. Shana Tova. At this point, do we move in the, okay. So we're now going on to the fourth Aliyah. The fourth Aliyah will be chanted by Sasha Drucker. And for the fourth Aliyah, we call members of the Children of the Covenant. And I'll tell you in a minute what the Children of the Covenant is, but representing the Children of the Covenant are Ina and Aaron Ettenberg.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Ki hamitzvah hazot asher anochi mitzavecha hayom lo niflehi mimcha v'lo rechoka hi lo v'shamayim hi le'amor mi יעלה לנו השמיימן ויקחך לנו וישמיענו אותה ונעשנה ולא מעבר לים היא לאמור מי יעבר לנו אל עבר הים ויקחך לנו וישמיענו אותה ונעשנה כי קרוב אליך הדבר מאוד בפיך ובלבבך לעשותו.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. Baruch atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Sasha, straight strength, Yashar Koach to you. Beautiful, beautiful chanting. And Aaron and Ina, Yashar Koach to the two of you as well. And to the members of the Children of the Covenant. Let me explain to everybody else. First of all, the name of our congregation, B'nai Brith, or B'nai Brit, literally means children of the covenant. And the Children of the Covenant members here are part of a program that we created a number of years ago, by which members of our congregation are invited, are encouraged, are asked to remember this congregation when they're making their estate planning, when they're doing their estate planning, and thinking about to whom they will leave their estate after they die. And so all of the members of the Children of the Covenant have taken that decision and taken that action. We never ask what the amount is, and they never tell us what the amount is. Actually, I guess some have told us, but in most cases, anybody can be a member of the Children of the Covenant, and in this way, just as, so much of what we're doing here is about our relationship with both the past and with the future, And the Children of the Covenant program is exactly about that. It is the way that we now in our generation are thinking about and providing for our children, our grandchildren, the future members of this congregation, and making sure that this congregation survives and thrives long, long, long into the future. And so to all of the members of the Children of the Covenant, and Aaron and Ina this morning are representing over 80 households in our congregation that have let us know that they have put the temple in their will, in their estate plans. To all of the members of the Children of the Covenant, we thank you. Thank you for valuing the congregation enough to think about putting us in your estate plans. And may you be rewarded for your generosity, for your thinking about the congregation, you and your families. May you be blessed for a coming year of peace, of learning, of growth, and a year of good health. Shana Tova. We're ready now to call the fifth Aliyah. The fifth segment of our reading is going to be chanted by Noah Zakshovsky, another recent bar mitzvah. In fact, Noah, this was true of Escher also. Escher, Noah, and a number of our young people have celebrated their bar bat mitzvah during the pandemic, and so they've had to do it under very extraordinary, very unusual and hard situations. And in each case, these young people have risen to the occasion and turned it into a great moment of celebration for their families and for the entire congregation. So Noah Zakshovsky is our fifth reader. And for the honor of the fifth Aliyah, we call our Holocaust survivors. And this group is getting smaller, inevitably, but really sadly for all of us. And this group is smaller each year, but representing the group of all of the Holocaust survivors in our congregation, we call Oscar Lowenschus. Oscar.
Baruch et Adonai HaMavorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMavorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMavorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bacha banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Re'eh natati lefanecha hayom et chachayim ve'et hatov ve'et hamavet ve'et harav asher anochi mitzavecha hayom le'ahava et Adonai Elohecha lalechet bidrachav v'lishmor mitzvotav v'chukotav u'mishpatav v'chayita v'ravita u'verachecha Adonai Elohecha ba'aretz asher ata v'ashama l'rishtaha v'im ifnei levavecha ve'lo tishma v'nidachta v'hishtachavita le'elohim acherim va'avadtam.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'dorchenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Noah, beautiful chanting, Yashar Koach to you. And Oscar, Yashar Koach to you. I do want to share a little bit. This is just a little bit of the way that family plays out in this congregation. Oscar is the grandfather of Felicia Palmer, who is Felicia Palmer Brenner, Rabbi Brenner's wife, Felicia. So Oscar is Felicia's grandfather. He and his wife Shoshana raised their children in this congregation. Oscar, as you might have been able to tell from his blessing, comes from a traditional Jewish background. He comes from an intact Jewish world. And to Oscar and to all of our Holocaust survivors, I want to acknowledge that you are our bridge back to a time where Judaism was a flourishing culture and religion in all of Europe, and that was a world that was destroyed, leaving just a few people. And you are our link to that world. And so we thank you, we bless you, Oscar, and all of our survivors. Thank you for being our link to our living past. And may you be blessed. You and all of your families be blessed with a coming year of good health. Shana Tova. Our sixth and final Aliyah is going to be chanted by Natalie Schweitzer, also a recent bat mitzvah this past summer. And for this Aliyah, we are honoring all of the new generation. The new generation are the teens and and younger and older as well, but especially all of our teens who are so active in all of the different parts of our congregational life. They serve as role models for our younger children. They are, of course, the members and leaders of our youth group, and they are our future. They're our future. And so in honoring our new generation, we celebrate our future, the fact that the future is very, very bright for the Jewish people and for this congregation. So representing the hundreds of Jewish young people engaged in Jewish life at CBB and beyond, we call two sisters, Abby and Emily Mintz. And again, Natalie Schweitzer is our reader. So Abby and Emily, please come on up.
Baruchu et Adonai Hamvarach. Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Yigadati lahem hayam yavod tovedun v'tarichin yamim al ha'adama asher ata over tayarden lavo shama lerishta haidoti bachem hayam et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz hachayim v'chamavet natati lefanecha haberacha v'haklala uvacharta b'chayim lema'an ticheh ata v'zarecha le'ahava et Adonai Elohecha lishmoa bekolo udavkavo hihu hayecha ve'orech yamecha lashevet al ha'adama asher nishpa Adonai la'avotecha le'Avraham le'Yitzhak u'Yaakov latet lahem.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Natan Lanu Torat Emet V'chayei Olam Nata B'tochenu. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Natalie, beautiful chanting, Yashar Koach, and thank you for coming back and learning a whole new Torah portion so soon after your bat mitzvah. And Abby and Emily, Yashar Koach to you. And to all of our young people, we want to acknowledge that this is not an easy time to be a young person. Not an easy time to be a person, period, in the world, but especially a young person. You guys, we know, want to be with your friends at school, learning, playing, creating, and doing together, but with your friends. And that this pandemic has made it very difficult to do that. We want to thank you and honor you, first of all, honor you for the strength and resilience that you are demonstrating. And I'm really speaking to all of the children of all ages in our congregation. We want to thank you for the resilience that you're demonstrating during this very difficult time. And we want to thank you for participating actively, joyfully in our congregation, in our education programs, and not just in our congregation programs, but in Jewish summer camps and other kinds of activities, other Jewish youth groups around town and the state. We are so, so proud of all of you guys. And we want to ask that this coming year, in addition to whatever challenges it brings, that it also be a year of fun and a year of fantastic learning and growth, and that in the coming year, as soon as possible, you'll be able to get back to school, back to your friends, back to your teachers, and back to life as you deserve it to be. Shana Tova. Now, at this point, Rabbi Brenner will lift the Torah, and we all rise. We're on page 274.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. יאללה לה 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 יאללה לה 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 יאללה יאללה לה 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 יאללה לה 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 la. As the Torah is being dressed, take a look at this new piece of functional art on our bima, created by Brian Soderstrom, a new Torah mantle holder. Thank you, Brian. It's beautiful and we love it. Hey, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la.
Cantor, that was incredibly impressive. I hope you let Brian know that you were going to be doing that.
I did not let him know.
Brian, I hope you were out there, because if not, you missed something very...
I just wasn't confident enough in my prose to tell him about it in advance.
That was a very, very creative way of thanking Brian, and on behalf of all of us, Brian, thank you for that beautiful, beautiful Torah mantle holder. Okay, we've come now to the Haftarah. Haftarah refers to the reading from the prophets that follows the Torah reading. And in this case, the traditional Haftarah for Yom Kippur morning, which we'll be hearing, is from Isaiah. And this is one of the most amazingly wonderful selections made by the sages many, many centuries ago, who chose the readings for the festivals. The reading from Isaiah, and you can follow it on page 277 of your prayer book, is the prophet Isaiah speaking to the people of his time, and he says to them, you're wondering why you're not feeling anything. It's Yom Kippur, and you're fasting, and you're praying, And you're thinking and you're saying, we're doing everything that we're supposed to, and we're not feeling anything. And Isaiah says to them, you have missed the point. This is not the fast that I desire. The fast that I desire is that you feed the poor, clothe the naked, give shelter to the homeless. This is Isaiah speaking to the people of his generation and to the people of our generation as well, and to every Jewish generation. The fast that God desires on Yom Kippur throughout the entire year is that we take care of the most vulnerable members of our community. Our Haftarah is going to be chanted by Ronit Enalik, and again, you can follow on page 277.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנביאים טובים ורצה בדבריהם הנאמרים באמת. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בתורה ובמשה עבדו ובישראל עמו ובנביאי האמת והצדק. קרא וגרון אל תחסוך, כשופר הרם קולך, והגד לעמי פשעם ולבית יעקב חטאותם. ואותי יום יום ידרשון, ודעת דרכי יחפצון. כגוי אשר צדקה עשה, ומשפט אלוהיו לא עזב. ישאלוני משפטי צדק, קרבת אלוהים יחפצון. למה צמנו ולא ראית? עינינו נפשנו ולא תדע. הן ביום צומכם תמצאו חפץ, וכל עצביכם תנגוסו. הן לריב ומצה תצומו, ולהכות באגרוף רשע. לא תצומו כיום להשמיע במרום קולכם. החזה יהיה צום, אברכהו יום ענות. אדם נפשו, הלחוף כאגמון ראשו, ושק ואפר יציע. הלזה תקרא צום ביום רצון לאדוני? הלא זה צום אבחרהו, פתח חרצובות רשע, התר אגודות מותה, ושלח רצוצים חופשים, וכל מותה תנתקו. הלא פרוס לרעב לחמך, ועניים מרודים תביא בית, כי תראה ערום וכיסיתו, ומבשרך לא תתעלם. אז ייבקע כשחר אורך, וארוחתך מהרה תצמח, והלך לפניך צדקך, כבוד אדוני יאספך. אז תקרא ואדוני יענה, תשבע ויאמר הנני. אם תסיר מתוכך מותה, שלח אצבע ודבר אבן, ותפק לרעב נפשך, ונפש נענה תשביע, וזרח בחושך אורך, ואפלתך כצהריים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, צור כל העולמים, צדיק בכל הדורות, האל הנאמן האומר ועושה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום הכיפורים הזה, שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמחילה ולסליחה ולכפרה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך. יתברך שמך בפי כל חי, תמיד לעולם ועד, ודברך אמת וקיים לעד. ברוך אתה, אדוני, מלך מוחל וסולח לעוונותינו ולעוונות עמו בית ישראל, ומעביר אשמותינו בכל שנה ושנה. מלך על כל הארץ, מקדש ישראל, ויום הכיפורים.
Amen. Yashar Koach Ronit, thank you so much for channeling the prophet Isaiah for us this morning. And now to share with us some ways that we can act to translate Isaiah's message into action today in our lives, our social action trustee, Annie Kemp.
Fellow congregants, dear friends, my name is Annie Kemp and I'm the trustee for the Social Action Committee. COVID-19 has created unprecedented needs, financial, economic, and social. Although there are myriad ways in which to help during these high holy days, CBB is focusing our efforts in two directions. The first is our own COVID-19 emergency fund, which has helped over 100 community members with food, housing, medical care, and assistance with tuition for BHY and Jewish learning programs. One recipient said, "Thank you for going above and beyond and helping make this whole nightmare livable and survivable for me." We continue to grant immediate funds to individuals on an as-needed basis. The need for emergency funding has increased and will likely continue to do so as the full financial hardship of COVID-19 continues to be progressive and its effects prolonged. The second is the Santa Barbara Food Bank, where every dollar contributed can provide 8 meals to individuals and families suffering from food insecurity. The food bank has also 300 partners in our community, such as Unity Shop and Community Health Center, which provide food to those in need. If you'd like to help, simply log on to our website and there will be links for both worthy causes. Please help us to support these efforts in any way you can so everyone can experience a better year to come. L'Shana Tova and Gemar Tov.
Thank you so much, Annie. Thank you for that message. Thank you for your work and for the work of everybody else in the social action realm at CBB. And I'd just like to reiterate what Annie said, that if you would like to give to the recipients that Annie mentioned, go to the temple website, cbbsb.org, and you'll find the way to do that right there. At this point, we have a couple more blessings that we do while the Torah is still out. And for the blessing for this country, we call Janet Wolf, a member of our congregation who has played a very active part in the leadership for our local government. Janet.
A prayer by Rabbi Leonard Cohen. Dear God and God of our ancestors, bless this country and all who dwell within it. Help us to experience the blessings of our lives and circumstances, to be vigilant, compassionate, and brave. Strengthen us when we are afraid. Help us to channel our anger so that it motivates us to action. Help us to feel our fear so that we do not become numb. Help us to be generous with others so that we raise each other up. Help us to be humble in our fear, knowing that as vulnerable as we feel, there are those at greater risk, and that is our holy work to stand with them. Help us to taste the sweetness of liberty, to not take for granted the freedoms won in generations past or in recent days. May we be strong and have courage, to be bold in our action and deep in our compassion, to discern when we must listen and when we must act, to uproot bigotry, intolerance, misogyny, discrimination, and violence in all of its forms, to celebrate the many faces of God reflected in the wondrous diversity of humanity, to welcome the stranger and the immigrant, and to honor the gifts of those who seek refuge and possibility here. As they have since done before us, our nation was born with all the source of life. Guide our leaders with righteousness. Strengthen their hearts, but keep them from hardening, that they may use their influence and authority to speak truth and act for justice. May all who dwell in this country share in its bounty, enjoy its freedom, and be protected by its laws. May this nation use its power and wealth to be a voice for justice, peace, and equality for all who dwell on earth.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you for delivering that message, and also thank you for your wonderful, wonderful career of service and leadership in our community. And now we turn now to page 288 for the prayer for the state of Israel, and we'll be hearing from a number of different people. First of all, some of our Israelis who have become part of our community, and also reading the English translation, a member of our community, Rabbi Ira Yudovin, who is, among other things, among other leadership roles that he has played in his life, was the founding executive director of the Association of Reform Zionists of America.
אבינו שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו.
ברך את מדינת ישראל, ראשית צמיחת גאולתנו.
הגן עליה בעברת חסדך, ופרוס עליה סוכת שלומך, ושלח אורך ועמיתך לראשיה, שריה ויועציה, ותקנם בעצה טובה מלפניך.
חזק את ידי מגיני ארץ קודשנו, והנחילם מאלוהינו ישועה, ועטרת ניצחון תיאטרם.
ונתת שלום בארץ, ושמחת עולם ליושביה, ונאמר אמן.
Avinu, you who are high above all nation states and peoples, Rock of Israel, the one who has saved us and preserved us in life, bless the state of Israel, first flowering of our redemption. Be her a loving shield, a shelter of lasting peace. Guide her leaders and advisors by your light of truth. Instruct them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who build and protect our holy land. Deliver them from danger. Crown their efforts with success. Grant peace to the land, lasting joy to all of her people. And together we say, Amen. Amen.
And now we turn to page 291 for returning the Torah to the Ark. And we rise.
כי לקח טוב נתתי לכם תורתי, אל תעזובו. עץ חיים היא, למחזיקים בה, ותומכיה מאושר. דרכיה דרכי נועם, וכל נתיבותיה שלום. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה. חדש חדש ימינו, חדש ימינו כקדם.
Page 296. Our God and God of all generations, may our prayers reach your presence, and when we turn to you, do not be indifferent. Adonai, we are arrogant and stubborn, claiming to be blameless and free of sin. In truth, we have stumbled and strayed. we have done wrong.
Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazanu, Diparnu Dofi, Vehirshanu, Zanu, Chamasnu, Tafanu Sheker, Kizavnu, Latnu, Maradnu, Niatnu, Sararnu, Avinu, Pashanu, Tsararnu, Kishinu Oreh, Rashanu, Shichadnu, Tayavnu, Tainu, Titanu,
Page 298. Our turning away from your mitzvot and laws of goodness is a hollow pursuit. You are just concerning all that happens in our lives. Your way is the way of truth, while ours leads to error. What can we say to you whose existence is beyond time and space? What words of ours can reach your realm, beyond the clouds, beyond heaven itself? Every hidden mystery, every revelation, surely you know them all. You know the secrets of the universe and the secrets of the human heart. You know and understand us, for you examine our inner lives. Nothing is concealed from you, nothing hidden from your sight. Eternal One, our God and God of our ancestors, we pray that this be your will. Forgive all our wrongs. Pardon us for every act of injustice. Help us atone for all our moral failures. We turn now to page 300 for the Vidui Rabbah, the long confession. We'll begin with the cantor and us responding, Hebrew and English, and then we'll go on, everyone at their own pace.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך באונס וברצון, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך ביודעים ובלא יודעים.
The ways we have wronged you under duress and by choice, and harm we have caused in your world consciously and unconsciously.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בבלי דעת, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בריצת רגליים להרג.
The ways we have wronged you through our thoughtlessness, and harm we have caused in your world through impulsive acts of malice. Please continue, everybody at your own pace, all the way through page 306.
The harm we have caused in your world through the parents and teachers. The ways we have wronged you by giving into our hostile impulses, and harm we have caused in your world through inflexibility and stubbornness. The ways we have wronged you in our routine conversation, harm we have caused in your world through ways we have wronged you in secret. And your world. The harm we have caused.
ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו. ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו.
Page 310.
We sing together, Ki anu amecha.
כי אנו עמך ואתה אלוהינו, אנו בניך ואתה אבינו, אנו לעבדיך ואתה אדוננו, אנו כעליך ואתה חלקנו, אנו נחלתך ואתה גורלנו, אנו צונך ואתה רואינו, כי אנו עמך ואתה אלוהינו, אנו בניך ואתה אבינו, אנו עבדיך ואתה אדוננו, אנו כעליך ואתה חלקנו.
Good Yantif. I've asked my wife, Felicia, to join me on the bima this morning for our sermon, because frankly, it felt wrong not to. Our topic this morning is a deeply personal story shared by us, and I felt it would be appropriate to let her use her own voice instead of allowing me to co-opt it.
We would just like to say before we start that this reflection might be painful and hard to hear for some, and we understand if at some point you need to turn your sound off and wait until we're done.
Last year, on Yom Kippur in the afternoon service, I sat on the bima and watched as we called our normal groupings of Aliyot. For the second Aliyah, we invited up people who had a rough year or went through a trying ordeal and were looking for a new start in a new year.
Last year on Yom Kippur, I was not here at CBB. I was serving for the second year as the cantorial soloist for the San Ynez Valley Jewish community. Since the community and I had a brief history together, conversations were deeper than simply, "Nice to meet you." Instead, I received a lot of, "How have you been? What have you been up to? What's new?"
I remember people walking up to the bima, people I knew that had suffered terrible tragedies, like the loss of a loved one or an unfavorable medical diagnosis. I remember now, as painfully and as vividly as I did that very day, wondering, do I stand up and go to the Torah? I remember feeling that I needed this aliyah. I needed to admit to myself that my experience, our experience, was worthy of admitting as a tragedy. And then I paused. Do I really want to be so public? People will wonder what happened to me. Do I want to invite that upon myself as a leader in the community? So I did not stand.
I could share the milestones of the past year, like that I'd moved back to Santa Barbara after a year-long stint in Charlotte, North Carolina, that we'd just bought a house, that we'd gotten a puppy 2 weeks prior. But I couldn't be fully honest. I wasn't prepared to share my ongoing hurt.
After being married for nearly 3 years, we made the decision that we were ready to start a family. We were exceptionally lucky and conceived quickly. We were overjoyed. But following the unwritten rules of early pregnancy, we refrained from telling anyone except our parents and siblings. Judaism has its own traditions of not jinxing a pregnancy. Instead of wishing an expectant mother a mazel tov, we cautiously say, "May it come at a good time, b'sha'a tova." And although many expectant mothers choose to, it is not traditional to have baby showers, as this too is seen as celebrating something that hasn't fully happened yet. But still, it was exciting.
Telling our parents was a thrill. I think we were just as looking forward to them becoming grandparents as we were in becoming parents. Books started arriving. We discussed which room would be the nursery, and daily, "How are you feeling?" check-ins would come from both of our moms. I started brainstorming about how we were going to tell our friends. Daniel and I had a friendly bet going on whether it was a boy or girl, and I kept on thinking about this little life growing within me that I had to protect, our tiny special secret.
The next week, we went to the doctor's office, where we were told they were unable to detect a heartbeat. They said it was early, that there was a chance that we could come back in a week or two, and they would be able to find it. 2 weeks of agony went by as we dreaded the words we would eventually hear. We had experienced a miscarriage.
Though we both stayed strong while meeting with the doctor, we couldn't keep it together when we called our parents. Telling family made the loss more real. I was grateful we only had a small circle to break the news to. Close family members had gone through the same thing, and they were able to bring us some comfort, but we felt exceptionally alone. I knew of a few others who had also experienced a loss, but it had only come up in passing, and I wasn't confident that it would be a conversation they'd be willing to have with us. After discussing options, I chose to have a D&C, a medical operation to remove the non-viable fetus, and that happened a few weeks before Rosh Hashanah. I took Friday off from work for the procedure and returned on Monday, trying to pretend nothing was different. But I had changed.
It was all happening in her body. I felt very outside the experience, almost detached. I could offer her sympathy and support and love, but I could not experience the physical pain she endured. I could not share in that with her.
My body, helped along by the procedure, resiliently returned to normal. There was pain, but it subsided. But my body moved on without my mind, and I had no emotional closure.
We went through our period of wondering what had gone wrong. Did we do something that caused this? We thought we were extra careful. We even devolved to finger pointing. Maybe if you had done this.
Maybe if you hadn't done that.
We knew the conversation was pointless and toxic, but we engaged in it nonetheless, searching for some sort of meaning in the grief we were experiencing. But there was no meaning. Sometimes there's just no answer but to live through the pain.
In reality, our suffering was one shared by tens of millions in this country. Miscarriages are a reality of trying to start a family. It's estimated that anywhere from 15 to 25% of pregnancies end in miscarriage, and many couples experience multiple in a row. In our present joy of expecting a child in the next few weeks, we're aware that while this time we have so far been successful, other friends who've been trying for months and years are still hurting. Even in writing this, we question whether we had the right to talk about miscarriage at all, since we had only suffered one. The whole experience opened our eyes to how much chance has to do with the start of life.
Just getting pregnant is difficult. Only 30% of couples are successful in their first month of trying, and that number decreases as time goes on. 10 to 15% of couples cannot naturally conceive children at all and must turn to in vitro fertilization treatments, surrogacy, and adoption. And despite this prevalence, the issue is something the Jewish community does not often talk about. The first commandment in the Torah is be fruitful and multiply, pru urvu, traditionally fulfilled by having at least one son and one daughter. There is a strong community pressure on couples to have children, particularly in the more observant community. We Jews like to focus on having kids, not as much on the journey getting there.
And still, our Torah reflects the struggle that many couples face trying to have children of their own. In the story of Eve, we learn that childbirth will be painful for women. Sarah, Rachel, and Leah all have trouble conceiving, turning instead to their handmaidens to birth the children that their husbands so desperately want. Rebekah and Isaac struggle too, Isaac crying out to God for help conceiving, and afterwards Rebekah seeking to understand the pain of her pregnancy. In our Haftarah from Rosh Hashanah, we find Hannah so consumed by prayers to have a child that she comes across as drunk. Almost all of our major female figures in Torah face issues with having children. It is fair to think that if today 15 to 25% of pregnancies end in miscarriage, the rates in biblical times may have been much, much higher.
The frequency of miscarriage and infant mortality in ancient times likely dictated Jewish law's response to the catastrophe. At first read, the halakha seems unempathetic, almost cruel. If a Jewish couple suffers a miscarriage, or if a baby is born but dies within the first 30 days of life, it is to be buried in a section of a Jewish cemetery reserved for such purpose, but with no formal prayers or service, no headstone. The couple is also not meant to sit Shiva or recite Kaddish on the anniversary of death.
After further thinking about these strictures, it is probable that they were to protect families who would experience this over and over as they attempted to start a family, particularly in times when medical knowledge just wasn't what it is today. But for us, that lack of ritual or a formalized grieving process left us unfulfilled.
Many Jews say they find great comfort in the strict process Judaism offers for grieving the loss of a loved one. The restrictive Shiva week, followed by 30 days of additional intense mourning, and finally the annual cycle of memory gives them a path forward. We did not need such a process, but we wanted something. And since Judaism had nothing to offer us, we did it ourselves. For us, that was going to Disneyland. It may seem trivial, but Disneyland holds a special place in our hearts and has been part of our relationship since our first week of dating. It was a meaningful choice we made, setting a date, marking a return from grief. Our pain was still there, but lessened. It helped us go forward.
As time moved on, we became more comfortable sharing our experience with others. Everyone was sympathetic, but most didn't quite know what to say. Medical professionals and others said, "It's only your first time trying? Don't worry." Or, "You're young and healthy. You'll be fine." But I didn't find that particularly helpful or comforting. Instead, I internally questioned, but what if we're not? What was helpful in our healing was hearing the words, "Us too. We went through that as well." This empathetic statement gave us more space to share openly. It wasn't sympathy we needed, it was community.
Last year on Yom Kippur, I did not stand for the Aliyah, but I found comfort in the words Rabbi Cohen gave to those who had the courage to come up. He said that it takes immense strength to be willing to admit you had a difficult year, that you need this Aliyah as part of your moving forward. He said there were probably many others in the room who felt similarly, but could not convince themselves to stand and receive the blessing. He said that all of you standing here represent many others in our community as well, and through you, they too will be blessed. I don't believe Rabbi Cohen said these words for me, but they felt that way, probably for others as well.
As telling our story became easier, it opened floodgates of questions from friends who were thinking about starting families. We started to feel obligated to share our experiences, resources, options.
This is why we are sharing the story with you today. This morning, we offer ourselves as a resource for those who seek it while navigating the winding path towards parenthood. We hope sharing our story allows for greater openness on this topic that has been taboo for so long. Because sometimes you just need someone who has gone through what you are experiencing to talk to.
Because sometimes a mother-to-be just needs a woman to talk to.
We do not want or need any sympathy or letters of acknowledging the pain we have felt. We want to stand here today and speak truths for those who have felt unbearable and unshareable pain, thinking they had to do it alone.
This is not just about miscarriage. Those who personally experienced or whose close friend or family member has dealt with abuse, addiction, divorce, suicide, mental health issues, physical ailments, loss of a child, these are just a few entry points to pain and suffering that people often weather, not thinking that they can ask for help. All are issues common in society, yet kept behind closed doors. We can benefit from each other's experiences and empathy. We can open the door.
God willing, in 2 weeks, I'll be going on parental leave. During my absence, I will be spending time thinking about how we, as Congregation B'nai B'rith, can better be available to each other in our moments of suffering and pain. How to best utilize the tapestry of experiences our congregants have lived, and identify those willing to be an empathetic ear for others. This is not something I'm going to be able to do on my own. So I'm asking those of you with experience working on these types of projects to help me. Let me know you are willing to help.
We hope that in some way we might inspire some of you to share your own stories of struggle and grief. It might be surprising how often you hear, "Us too. We went through that as well."
Sometimes life is mired and harsh and feels like the pain will never end.
But we find strength when we can face it together.
Gemar Chatima Tova.
May you be sealed for goodness in the year to come.
הרופא לשבורי לב ומכבש לעצבותם מונה מספר לכוכבים לכולם שמות יקרא Healer of the broken-hearted, binder of their wounds, counter of uncountable stars, you know where they are. הרופא לשבורי לב ומכבש לעצבותם מונה מספר לכוכבים לכולם שמות יקרא Healer of the broken-hearted, binder of our wounds, counter of uncountable stars, you know where we are.
As we move to the end of our Yom Kippur morning services, we'd like to invite you to our afternoon programming, which is starting as soon as our service ends, at 1 o'clock, or when we're done. Dr. Gary Linker will be leading a discussion on what this year asks of us. At 2 o'clock, Renee Golan will be leading a meditation for Yom Kippur, and at 3 o'clock, Rabbi Cohen will be leading a discussion based on the Israeli music video Keter Melucha, an inspiring and beautiful piece of music. All of these are on Zoom. You can find the links on our website. Our afternoon service will continue at 4, followed by Yistkor at approximately 5:30, Ne'ilah at approximately 6:15. And then we will be joining together for a Havdalah and first bite at the conclusion of our service around 7 o'clock. Thank you for joining us for this morning. We'll conclude with Hayom Te'amseinu on page 318.
Hayom, 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 hayom te'amseinu. Hayom, 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 hayom tevarchenu. Amen. Hayom, 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 hayom tegadlenu. Amen. Hayom, 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 hayom tidrashenu letova. Amen. Hayom, 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 hayom tichtevenu lechaim tovim. Amen. Hayom, 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 hayom Shabbatenu. Amen. Hayom, 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 hayom titmechenu bimin tzedaka. Amen.
Good Yantif, Gemar Chatima Tova. Thank you. We'll see you this afternoon.